Hi, today we'll be speaking to Henry Johnston on mental health and vulnerability. How are you, Henry?
I'm absolutely fantastic. I'm so happy to be here.
Amazing, that's wonderful to hear. So, to start us off, how would you describe your journey from a 16-year-old to where you are today, and how has your life influenced the professions you've partaken in now?
Good question. So, 16-year-old Henry was very, very unsure, very, very unsure of the world around him, very, very unsure of his own abilities, own capabilities. I was really searching for an identity. I feel that runs really, really strongly through being a teenager. And unfortunately, I found my identity in drugs and alcohol because they were a really efficient way for people to view me as that's Henry. He smokes a lot of weed. He drinks a lot of drugs. He's like that guy at the party. And that kind of served me quite well for some time through school. I didn't get any grades. I was deemed an F up a lot by my parents and by the school system. And I really took on that moniker as the drug taker, as the drinker, as the guy with mental health issues. And it just enveloped my life. I became like when other people went to college and went to uni, like I was still taking drugs. I was still running from myself, not facing, like unable to love myself in the way that actually I deeply, deeply needed at the time. And I did end up going to uni, didn't do any work because I was deeply, deeply afraid, deeply, deeply uncertain of myself. And my drug taking and my alcohol drinking just escalated to the point where I got nothing from uni, got kicked out by my parents. Every relationship I had fell apart. And I ended up in rehab, having reached a very severe rock bottom. And I can speak about that later if you like the absolute worst that I could get to. And fast forward, I went to rehab, failed a couple of times, went back, and finally at the age of 28, I got clean and I got sober. Now it is pain that informed my work today. Now, the work I do is beautiful and life changing and fantastic in so many ways. But in order to be so good at my job, I have to have had to have gone through the abject pain and suffering that I went through. And by doing that, it has been my greatest gift. The greatest gift that I can bring to all of my clients, that I can hold them in a place that is completely non-judgmental, completely beautiful, because I understand what it's like to be in disconnect from self and disconnect from power. And now it's very kindly said, I'm very successful. That feels quite nice. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And this is where I am today. So that's kind of like a brief overview because there is so much
I
in
mean,
the
yeah,
journey.
it's amazing what you've done. I mean, to take yourself from where you were before to where you are now is, first of all, absolutely amazing. I mean, it's one thing being in a situation and going up, but being at the bottom to going to where you are now is obviously a very impressive accomplishment. How do you suggest teenagers in that situation where they've reached this rock bottom can actually grow to become a success or become almost take themselves out of that situation where they're in the rock bottom?
It's a good question, and I just want to pick it apart a little bit and just speak to success because I know that you want to hear, what success is now. And so I encourage all of your listeners to not listen to the world outside to deem what success means to you. I spent 20 years listening to the outside world of what does a man need to be, even looking at my parents, like how do my parents show success? Do I need to be like this? And it created such a huge conflict inside me that I ran from everything because it caused me such pain. So I just carried this belief system that I was never ever going to be a success and that I was always deemed for failure. Now, the one thing that was never ever given to me when I needed it the most was for someone to level with me and say, hey, Henry, like you're not doing okay. What works for you? I needed that to continue my journey. I've completely forgotten the first part of your question. So I got so into like the
No, absolutely. It was regarding how can people who have reached that rock bottom state in their teenage lives take themselves out of it.
okay, so like I'm gonna level with you all is that you are the most important person in this situation. You may not be understood by those around you, and it can be really, really difficult to reach out for help when you see your life, which you've been kind of it's often the times we get to our rock bottoms and go, life was never meant to be like this. We are sold a fantasy of what our lives are like, and life is complex and brutal and hard. And as a teenager,
Absolutely, yeah.
I didn't know what was going on. Like, life as a teenager was scary. It was difficult. It was really, really hard. So my encouragement is to, if you feel able to tell someone how bad it is for you in this moment, that you do not know what to do, but you could really do with some help. Because when we are disconnected in our rock bottom, we tend to gather all of our self-attack and make it like something wrong with us, but there's nothing wrong with you. You're in pain. Life has led you to this place, and you absolutely can get out of it. And the first part is trusting that you can, and trusting that you are not an F up. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. You do not need to be fixed. One thing you can do is start to tell people and build a trusting, safe community.
So you mentioned four key words, which is reach out for help. Who do they reach out to? I mean, there are a lot of students in and teenagers in my environment who don't have the access to therapy and all this stuff. Who should they reach out to and talk to?
Yeah, this is really, really important, because I understand that therapy isn't always available, and the school system, I'm just going to say it. Actually, I'm not entirely sure how the school system is in South Africa, but in the
Similar
UK,
to England, yeah.
it lets us down. It's by and large, it's making changes, but by and large, it kind of crushes the soul of everyone who goes in there, because it's based all around seriousness. So what you want to do is, and I'm going to speak directly to men, like, men are incredibly adept at speaking to other men and allowing themselves, like, when you are like, we are community builders. If we go back, way back to cavemen times, we were the one who created the communities, the safety. We looked out for each other. There is a huge power if you can speak to a male friend and level with them and say, I'm not okay right now. There's something that I want to share with you. There's something that I want to speak to you about, whatever it is. Like, talking to another male and appropriately finding that friend that you can speak to, who will listen to you, is essential.
So I actually I'm in an all boys school, to be honest, and we deal with this sort of situation all the time where no one actually wants, well, I don't obviously, but no one wants to actually open up to their friends. I mean, I've never had a conversation or seen a conversation being had regarding people's issues, and almost everyone in this world has the issues, whether big or small. Why is it important that men should become more vulnerable, and where's the line crossed where vulnerability becomes seen as a weakness?
That is a great question. And to answer that question, we need to go way back in time
Let's
to
do it then.
the not lights, way back to the future. But to think about how vulnerability has been sold to men. Now, way back, let's think about the First World War, when they were drafting people into the war. What lie was sold to men in order for them to go and give their lives? It was, you are a hero. You are strong. You are fighting for your country. They may well have been terrified, but they never shared that, because they were partaking in that, I'm going to be celebrated, I'm going to be honorable. If I hold all of that in, then I'm going to be the hero. I'm going to give my life for my country and completely ignore that I'm absolutely terrified. I have no idea what to do. Now, if you look through history, men have been sold this ideal of being a hero. So if you look at it, like, what the hero doesn't speak about how he's actually terrified and afraid. This is what men have sort of ingrained into them. Unfortunately, we have been sold the idea that we must be heroes and that we absolutely do not open up, because that is the weakness. Now, the world is shifting and the world is changing around vulnerability, but men are still quite a far way off from accepting vulnerability as actually a strength, because it is. Now, you're in an all boys school then, so you have the power right in this moment to be a leader in your openness, because what we want is for people to embrace their vulnerability, but for it not to be a risk to them.
Absolutely.
Men are told that to be open is to allow a clink in your armor for someone to attack you. However, you can speak very openly about what you are feeling vulnerable about, and you will teach other people that it is okay, because you're okay doing it. And we can only send an invitation to other people to let them know that it is okay to share this. Now, I'm not saying that it's the easiest thing in the world. Like, I went to an all boys school as well. Like, it was like heavily geared towards getting into the army or running up hills.
Power, yeah, all that
Yeah,
sort of
like
stuff. No, exactly.
masculinity, right? Didn't fit with me. And I never took that chance to open up. I did find my friends who were generally like of the more gentle kind, which allowed me like a little bit of safety within that. But we really have to understand that men have not been nurtured in a way that we have needed to be in order to see opening up and having vulnerability as an essential part of growth, because everybody feels vulnerable. Everybody is unsure. I am a successful 42-year-old man. I certainly have to be little spoon with my wife because sometimes life is terrifying,
Yeah.
right? And in that, I allow her to see it's like I'm a human being.
So you would say that if for the people who aren't becoming vulnerable and talking about the issues, it's almost a mistake. Would you say not to do that?
Mistakes are a strong word. I always think of sort of things as an invitation. There is an invitation for you to try something new for your benefit. Like,
So,
sorry, go on.
no, please go first.
If we start putting labels of this is wrong that you're not being vulnerable, you're actually giving someone a double negative and it's going to push them further into resistance.
100%.
It's
So,
like,
sorry, I'm interrupting you, but in my environment, what I've seen, which is a clear thing, is that people aren't supportive of other people becoming vulnerable, and this creates a thing of if you're vulnerable, you're weak, but not because like bullies is an example, right? A bully will, if someone's vulnerable, they'll get teased about being vulnerable. What would you tell those people who are actually stopping the vulnerability? I mean, I've always stuck by the saying that a bully is almost the weakest and most hurt of the group. What would you say to those people who are almost stopping other people from becoming vulnerable and getting over their not issues but their trauma almost?
so we're speaking to the people who go out of their way to see other people's weaknesses and exploit them.
100%. Yeah.
Right. So I want to speak to, I have been both a bully and I have been bullied. And I can tell you, sure as anything, that you're in pain. Right, the bully is in pain. Now I hear you and I see you, that things have happened in your life which have led you to create a guard around you, that you need to be a certain way. Maybe you feel you need to be so guarded about how much pain you're in that you are creating a mask to project to everyone else who you want them to think you are, because you are terrified that if they see beyond this mask, they will see just how vulnerable you are. Like, bullies are, they are so demonized. But if you look at the way a bully is treated in school, they're punished. Some of
Yeah.
their behavior is not okay, and there needs to be boundaries into what is good and what is not okay, right? We all need boundaries, but we often miss out on the fact that, like, it's good or bad. If you're bullying someone, my invitation is you can be far stronger, far more if you just stop. If you made friends with the person that you've been bullying, that the ramifications of that will be so unbelievably powerful. You will transform in that moment and become a better, more secure, more confident man. And the person who you are bullying, they will feel more connected, freer, and able to go on their own journey of healing. Like, we are dealing with men and young men who are in pain, who are traumatized, but there is not the space for them to either talk or go through their own journeys, or it's being supported and being seen. But it's a big ask to ask a teenager to recognize that. Like, I'm talking kind of advanced emotional awareness here, but everyone has it.
So I'm going to change the topic to the power of the mind and the power of you. I mean, you're obviously a big believer in that from what I've seen during my research. Can you expand on what the power of you actually means and why it's important to develop a certain level of control and power of our minds?
Absolutely. Now, you may well have read Like, and to all your listeners, you know, seen on Instagram, on TikTok, whatever it may be, even YouTube Shorts, about the power of you. It is so like funneled into us, but no one actually explains what it is. So it becomes like a platitude, like it becomes quite empty. It's like, yes, I believe in the power of me, but I've no connection with that. I don't really know what that means, but I'm able to wear it as a mask to be like, I believe in the power of me, but there's no backup, so there's no substance, and ultimately you're kind of
Yeah.
missing out on a journey. It's called a spiritual bypass, right? You kind of jump to one thing that's really good without looking in between. Now, what I've learned, like, and I cannot go into just how traumatizing my life was. You know, my whole sense of self was removed. Now, the interesting thing is, there is no hierarchy in mental health and pain. My pain is on a level with your pain. It's on a level with everyone else's pain. Like, we have to remove ourselves from the stigma of, because I went through this, what your experiences are less than that, right? It's not about that. One thing that was always within me that I ignored, that I never ever listened to, was me, who I was, and how accepting I was of myself. The world cannot give you what you desire in order to feel happiness, peace, success, confidence. It can't. But the world also tells us that we need to focus on that. We are constantly, like, teenagers are barraged with information about who you should be, what you should be, what's okay, what's not okay, all of this, and it just creates a disconnect with self. Now, within you, you may be surprised to know, or not surprised, that you have every single resource within you to become a successful, incredibly powerful, wonderful, beautiful, and almost transcendent from what human beings are kind of meant to be. And it is so important that we begin to shift our understanding of who we are, not based on what the world tells us we are. Me, I'm a deeply sensitive, really geeky, really nerdy, quite strong and big, quite masculine in some respects, but I'm multifaceted. And so is everyone else. And you have something within you which is more powerful than you know, and that's your subconscious.
So you think it's almost a thing of accepting who you are and who you've been born with, rather than trying to fight against that and become what
Massively,
society. Yeah.
massively about self-acceptance. You know, like, we live in a world, there's a wonderful saying which I'm kind of gonna adapt a little bit, which is, you know, we live in a world which thrives on cruelty and telling us that we are not as good as we think we are, and that we need something, you know, we need this extra thing in our life to be who we want to be. Like, that's all just bollocks, right? It's not true in the slightest. So in order to begin to accept yourself and love yourself for the essence of who you are becomes the greatest act of rebellion that you can do, because you're going against the norm. Like, if you're kind and sensitive, that is beautiful. If you find yourself enjoying being healthily aggressive in sport, that's beautiful. If you find yourself crying at Marley and me, my God, I am with you on that. Like, that is beautiful. There is no part of you which is not allowed. You're a beautiful, wonderful human being with every single resource that you could ever dream of. But it's the stories that the world has been telling you that's stopping you from believing that. So it's a shift, right? It's a big ask. Are you willing in this moment to trust that you, as you are, is perfect, and to reject what the world tells you you have to be in any way, because that will crush you faster than a tin can in space.
I mean, a lot of teenagers, from what I've seen, are not strong enough to just accept or just go into just thinking they're perfect as they are. What advice would you give those teenagers who aren't strong enough to make that shift all of a sudden? What would you tell them?
Okay, so anyone who's listening is like, what? Like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Like, I can't do that. Jesus Christ. Is, you can begin to build yourself up. Right. And it sounds so simple. It sounds almost condescendingly simple, but oftentimes solutions to wider problems are incredibly simple. Find something that you enjoy. What do you enjoy? What can you pour your heart and soul into effortlessly? throughout my life, the young men who actually had a more kind of balanced, smoother journey were always the ones who had a hobby that they absolutely adored. It didn't matter what it was, but in that moment, they were recognizing themselves, they were accepting themselves, they weren't allowing themselves to be molded by any external expectation. Like, find something that lights you up, that gives you something, and follow that and give it like, I love Warhammer. Do you have Warhammer in South Africa?
No, no, I don't.
Yeah, Warhammer, it's like little models that you play and roll dice, right?
Right.
42-year-old man. I love it. Right. There were people in my primary school going through to college and in secondary school who loved that hobby. And they were bulletproof because
Yeah.
everyone's searching for an identity, right? So instead of finding it in drugs and anything like that,
They just were
find a
them.
hobby
Yeah.
that you really really love, and you will have that hobby all the way through your life, and it will give you a wonderful baseline. That is a sure way to start understanding. Like, we'll never truly know who we are, but we can know what we love. And if you can connect to something that you really love, I promise you it'll give you more medicine for your soul and your sense of self-belief than you ever thought possible.
So, just out of interest, who are you today? I mean, what are your hobbies, and what's the next step in your journey to trying to achieve more success?
So success, again, success is like happiness. Now, I just want to, one of the favorite things that really helps this put into context, like, we're not supposed to experience success constantly, right? Because then it will become meaningless. If you watch the Matrix movies, it's the second one where they're talking about, creating the Matrix and what worked best for human beings. Is the engineer says, the first couple of matrices we created were utopia. There was no suffering. Everyone was happy. And it destroyed itself, because human beings aren't meant to experience consistency in like the good stuff. We have to experience the awfulness and the rock bottoms and the sadness, as well as the elations and everything. Like, that's what creates, where it's okay to live in that imbalance, right? Success will come and it will go, but the thing that success hinges upon is, like, if you decide to go out and do something, when you do that, you are a success. And that goes right down from, right, and it sounds so silly and people are like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But believe me, I really do. It's
Yeah.
like, if you decide to get up in the morning, brush your teeth, put your shoes on, go out the door with a smile on your face, and that's all you want to do, you are
Do that.
determined as a success. Like, success is not up here, if you're listening audio, like, it's not way above you. It shifts and it changes, and it is entirely up to you. You get to decide how you are a success. Nobody else does. I
Absolutely.
get
So
so
you,
carried away with the passion that I completely
n-
forget the question.
no, 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 that's all good. It's all good. So, I mean, you did touch on it almost perfectly. So you're describing the fact that you must just choose to smile, choose to do what a happy person does, and choose to make the steps forward to trying to achieve success, which is as a whole happiness. Correct?
Yeah, and also allow yourself to be human and not to feel successful and not to feel happy, because it's okay to
And
not
that
be
failures
okay.
may come. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like, if you constantly strive for positive mental attitude, you will invariably come across a time when you're not. Now, if you're really holding on to success, being constantly positive, when you get a knockback, you'll feel like a failure. And we
Yeah.
don't want to feel like failures, because that sabotages us and makes us guarded and shifts us further away from really dreaming that we can do. I spent decades with a little voice in my head saying, you can't do that, you can't do that. That's for other people. You're always going to be down here. You're always going to be looking up through that glass ceiling at other people. But it was sabotage. It simply wasn't true. Success is simply what you decide success is.
So now you obviously tell yourself that you can do that, and you can achieve what you want to achieve, and you can actually make the steps forward to try and achieve your personal success, and that is the key to happiness.
Of course, and happiness comes and it goes. And when it comes at your door, love that it's there. Give yourself permission to smile for it to nourish you, but accept that it will go. But that's okay too. We want that. We want that kind of toing and froing of life. You know, I remember like as I actually mentioned this in my wedding vows, which I'm not going to go into. I was married last year. That right,
Oh,
getting married.
congratulations.
Thank you. Getting married, pretty impressive for a guy who used to stare down the bottom of a bottle on a mattress filled with his own uh, excretions,
Yeah.
right? But all the way through those times in the absolute darkness, even when I was a teenager and I felt like I couldn't speak to anyone, in those moments of quiet when I had to reflect on myself, where I felt lost and unsure and very, very scared. Oh, why have I forgotten my train of thought then? Ah, there we go. Right. I dreamt of a life where I wouldn't be alone, where I would be successful, right? Where my parents would be proud of me. Like my parents just weren't proud of me for a very, 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 very long time in my life. And it became this impossible dream. Now I was walking down into the tube in London and in the underground one day, and I had my rucksack on my back and I was going, I was therapist. And then I caught myself and I realized, and this was a few years ago, I realized in that moment, I was my addict self greatest dream. I was the dream that I thought I could never, ever achieve. And it brought me to tears. And there I was on the Jubilee line, just in floods of tears.
And
And
then
it's
you
beautiful.
obviously now made the change and become who you are today.
Yeah. And then I think now as I think about success and recognition, and I've listened to one of like your intro podcast and you were speaking about manifestation, and the energetic nature of the universe. And that's something I believe in fully. Like all we have is our intention. We can't control where it goes. But if you come at something with an intention, like I want to be better, I want to get better, I want to feel happier, everything you do from that moment on, if you're coming from that intention, will be, if it is aligned with that, amazing things will happen. And you don't have to do anything about it. The moment you step into that energy and you start to antagonize it with, well, I'd really like this and this isn't happening, right, it just stops, it fractures. The ask of manifestation is to step into something with a pure intention that comes from love, right? Love is everything. And people might think, well, how is love everything? But when you love something, it is pure, it is unadulterated, and it will lead you to feeling good and settled. If you can find something, be it a hobby that you fall in love with and you love, you will see how it nourishes you. Success works on exactly the same principle. Now, 2 years ago, I set the intention. I was doing really well in my business, but I was like, I want to help people from across the world. I want to help people who possibly have a celebrity status. I want to help them be more, transform their lives. I want to earn this amount of money in my bank account. I went deep into that manifestation. I planted that seed. The intention was not to be richer or more powerful, but it was to bring love to the world. I wanted to do what I loved. I wanted love to flow through me. 2 years later, I've achieved all of that and more. And I haven't had to do anything. I've just simply let go and allowed my intention to play out in the way that it is wanted to play out.
So success is, as you've probably realized, a running theme throughout the podcast. How could we link the power of the mind, which we've been discussing, and achieving success?
Mine and achieving success. So, how am I achieving success? There are various ways that you can go about it. And again, like there is real simplicity in this, because when you say, how can I link the power of the mind to success? People go, well, I don't even know. There's so much possibility. The scope is huge. Yes, it is, but we
Yeah.
can bring it down. Now, your your mind, your subconscious mind, is the most powerful form of creating intention and success. And all you have to do is take a couple of minutes every day, listen to a song that lights you up, right? Everyone has that song, it makes them feel powerful, and you visualize what you want to see in your life. Like you put yourself into that situation. A while back I did it when me and Joe, my wife, were looking for a house, and like she was like, we can't afford those. I was like, Joe, we're gonna look at these houses, and we are going to tell our minds that we are already living there. Once you implant that seed, your subconscious mind forms everything else around it. Your conscious beliefs, your conscious thoughts, each step that you make towards success, it takes care of all of the business, but you've got to tell it what you want. That also clicks into manifestation. And it seems like magic. It's like, how can it be that simple? But it is. Like, the power of your mind is the engine that's ready to go. You have to give it the fuel, you have to put in the sat nav thingies, and then it's off.
I'm going to read a quote which I found that from you. It is, "The reason I believe so strongly in the work I do is simple. I know what it is like to feel small, confused, stuck, and powerless over forces that can seem completely overpowering. My question is, what are these forces you're speaking about, and how can we become in control of them?"
The forces, when I felt really, really, really small, it was around people that I had no control over. It was the messages that I received, like, "You're an F up." I'm not sure if I can swear, but I'm
It's
a
fine.
prolific swearer, but I
Yeah.
won't swear. It was, "You won't achieve anything. You're an F up. You've let us down. You're disappointing." All these negative words made me feel small and defenseless, like nothing I could say could disagree, and it wouldn't make any difference if I did. Failed relation. Like, I remember being a teenager and just being so bloody confused about how people in the world worked. Like, women especially. I was completely, like, as a teenage boy, like, dating and women was like so important. It was so part of the hierarchy. But I found, like, every interaction I had with a woman just let me feel like emasculated, powerless. And I was really in pain about that, but I never told anyone. I was never able to heal that part of me that wanted to believe that I was actually okay. I felt as if the world was against me constantly. And my choice in response to that was to hide, was to take more drugs, was to take more alcohol, was to disconnect even further. Now, everyone's journey is their own. But what I really suggest doing is finding something again that contradicts, find something that you believe in. Even if you're unable to trust yourself, like being the powerful person that you are, find something that you believe in, that you can latch onto, that goes against everything that you think people think of you, but helps you believe in yourself.
And I mean, we've been having discussions about success and how to be happy and solving all these horrible things that many teenagers are dealing with in our world. How can teenagers develop a positive mindset and build a strong sense of self-worth to avoid falling into these traps?
All right, make up your own mind about what you like and what you don't. Right, social media is, social media is everywhere, and it becomes like a broken record of adults saying, "Oh, well, you shouldn't." Right, social media, I'm going to tell you, like, it robs you of your sense of self if you overindulge in it. So my honest advice is, take action and lessen the areas to which not the areas to which the opportunities for the outside world to program your mind in regards to what you think and do. Like, the more time you spend by yourself doing what you love, the far faster you will nurture a place within you of self-belief. Like, it is so much about, do not let anybody tell you en masse who you should be. Like, this is the responsibility. Okay, this is, I feel like this, I want to feel like this, I don't know what to do about it. At never any point is responsibility taken away from you. That is one of the most powerful actions that we can take. If you don't take responsibility, then you'll fall into the trap that I did, and I'll feel like a victim and I'll feel powerless. But you can see where in your life things are not serving you. Like, just from your day to day now, like, just like you're scanning your life and notice, where's the dip? What takes energy away from you? And you'll feel it. It's really nuanced, but you'll feel that energy being taken away from you. That's your opportunity to take responsibility that you no longer want that in your life. And if you no longer want that in your life, what boundaries, and boundaries are a line in the sand, a line in the ground of, like, I won't accept this anymore, but I will accept this for myself. Like, the power of responsibility is massive.
You mentioned social media, which is obviously in the modern world becoming in more and more of a hectic thing, positive and negative almost. How can teenagers deal with taking themselves away from the negative aspect that social media offers?
Allow yourself, as I said before, allow yourself to disagree. Now, quite often, like even like when I was young, I just believed everything. I thought, well,
Yeah.
they're they're in a place of authority, but allow yourself that critical thought. Like, you are allowed to disagree with an influencer. If you think an influencer is talking a load of BS and it doesn't match your experience, you are able to disagree with them and go, right, they no longer serve me. This actually makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. And social media, it's like sort of the whole invention of the internet is beautiful. It's like, I run all of my sessions online over Zoom, right? Perfect. But there is always that imbalance. And I think teenagers are particularly susceptible to the negativity. Now, if you look at mental health, like, social media is fantastic at spreading the message about mental health and allowing people to connect and recognize what's going on inside them. But however, even mental health can become incredibly toxic because it starts to tell people how they are feeling. Like, someone might just be having a bad day and they might see some content online and they leave it saying, I've seen a good number of young men come into my sessions and they've self-diagnosed themselves with everything up to schizophrenia. Like, that's not helpful. That is not going to serve you. So allow yourself that critical thought. When you have a critical thought and you allow yourself to make a decision, you boost your confidence. That builds your sense of self. That is how you know who you are in that moment, because you disagree with something.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned at the start of our interview that you got into drugs and drinking and were at almost rock bottom. How were you able to overcome these addictions?
Good question. It's not a quick fix. It is not a case of doing one thing that suddenly changes your life course, or the course of your life. Like, I had to experience rock bottoms again and again and again over the course of like 10 years. And I wish I could say that there was one magical thing that came in which allowed me to shift, but there wasn't. But as time went on, every human being gets closer and closer to that choice of no more. There must be something else, right? There must be. I was walking across Hammersmith Bridge in London, which is a beautiful bridge. Sun was shining. I was wearing a t-shirt that I felt deeply fat and uncomfortable in. And I was in pain and I was sweating and I was coming down and I was just had the shakes. And I had this thought of like, there has to be something different. There has to be. And it was in that moment that my perspective shifted a little bit and I started considering what I might have to do to get out of that situation.
And what did you do? Just from an
Well,
interest point of view.
I became open to people suggesting that maybe I should see a doctor. Maybe I should speak to someone. It was that. And then I spoke to a doctor who was like, you're not okay. We need to get you off the drugs. We need to get you off the drink. They put me into a hospital, right? They kind of removed my sense of autonomy within that. But when you are so down in your rock bottom, it is really down to your own choice in that moment when you feel you cannot go any deeper. It's a very, there is no other experience like it. And you're given a choice. It's like the crossroad choice. It's like, which way do you want to go? And by and large, and I want to reassure everyone who's listening to this, when you reach that point, you absolutely do have the choice. Like, you get to choose what you want. You don't need to know how it's going to look, how it's going to work, but a very simple conversation of saying, I need help.
Absolutely.
Even if that's, and it can look however it looks, if it is just one conversation, one invitation of connection.
So before I'm going to finish off with our final question, but before I do so, I just want to say again, thank you so much for doing this. I mean, you're a true inspiration to to me, especially, but also to a lot of other teenagers. I mean, your story is unbelievable. And the final
Can I just
question,
jump in and
yeah,
go
yeah, of
like,
course.
you guys are the inspiration, right? No one was doing this when I was a teenager, right? You guys setting up this podcast for this intention, that is amazing. Honest to God, like my thanks to you. I've been inspired by you today.
Thank you so much. So for the final question, it's if you could go back and say one thing to your 16-year-old self, what would it be?
That's a beautiful question. I feel quite emotional when I think of that. I can see him, you know, I can see him just smoking weed, wearing his ridiculous clothes. I think I'd sit him down and I'd be like, dude, it's gonna be okay. Like, do not change. Like, there are gonna be awful things that happen to you. Life is gonna become so difficult, and you're gonna wonder how you are gonna move forward, but it's gonna be okay. I love you. I think you're fantastic. You don't have to believe me, but I'll see you. I'll see you in the future, and I love you, man. And then I disappear into a puff of smoke.
Thank you so much for listening. That was Henry Johnston on mental health and mental well-being. Looking forward to seeing you next time.